going back to here. Yes. Okay. Welcome everybody. This is the last session for China Today in our first term, and we will have another 3 meetings in second term, third term, and fourth term, etc. Today we're talking about the China's next 5 years. Its 14th 5-year plan. So let me just share screen first, and then we'll start screen. I am going to share this screen. Share. I hope you can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay, let's start with that. So what can we expect from China in the next 5 years? The 5-year plan started in 2021. So we are already about 2 years into the plan already. But because the plan is a very high-level document, so we might not be able to see the effects immediately. But we know the intention and the direction China is going to achieve in this 5 year. Obviously, this 5 year seems to need some adjustment later on that we will see. 5-year plan. Now, following the Soviet model, since the establishment of PRC, the People's Republic of China, Chinese government follow a planned economy. That means it will have a high-level documents specifying what they will want to achieve in the next 5 years. So the characteristic is it is a socialist economy. So I will try to explain to you the difference between capitalist economy and socialist economy. There are significant differences. So we will go to that when we enter into the more details. The second thing is about so-called state-owned enterprise. We know that in China we have quite a number of state-owned enterprise. This state-owned enterprise operates like a company, but of course the ownership belongs to the states. So when this company operate and generate profit, the profit go to the government as a supplement to tax. This is different from what we have here. We are running a capitalist system, and although the government may start some company, for example Telstra, but eventually Telstra get privatized, and then the ownership belongs to the shareholders. Whereas in China, the state-owned enterprise might also try to get some funding from the market. That means putting it on the stock market in order to generate some funds for it to operate. But the major ownership always resides at the hand of the state. Now that is not unique in China. It actually quite a number of economies still follow the same issue, although we recognize them as democratic. For example, Singapore. The Singapore Airlines is a single enterprise. It's owned by the Singapore government. Another telecommunication company which operates also in Australia here is Optus. Optus is also a state-owned enterprise owned by the Singapore government. But in normal operation, you won't see the state-owned enterprise working like a government department. They are basically companies. The ownership belongs to the government. With that in mind, then we will have to look at what will be the social function of this government. Of this state-owned enterprise. Normally, when we talk about a state-owned enterprise, we think of it as the government controlling everything. But in other ways, the state-owned enterprise function as a private company, but it will also serve some social functions. For example, you really talk about high-speed rails. High-speed rails, it itself operates like a company. That means we buy tickets, and then the tickets, income of the tickets go into running the company. And if this particular track or this route is have a lot of sponsors or customers, that route make money. But for some routes, it may not have a lot of passengers, so they may be losing money. If we run it in a pure capitalist point of view, then we will tend to say, okay, this route is not making money. We close it off to cut the expenses. Sometimes the running of the service is even more expensive than what you can get from the fares. So it is losing money. So from a pure capitalist point of view, that is a losing money route. So we will stop it. But in a state-owned enterprise, when you consider the social service that routes provide to the citizens, making the citizens travel from one point to the other point easier, although that particular route doesn't have a lot of passengers, but still providing a social service to the community, then in a state-owned enterprise, they don't need to consider each route as one company. If this route make money, that route lost money, doesn't matter. Because not only the company need to make money, but it also need to serve a social function. So there is a big difference between socialist economy and capitalist economy. And because China, at least PRC, started as a communist country, and eventually now we will call China a socialist country rather than a communist economy. But at the end of the day, the main idea is that the government need to serve the people, need to provide social services, which may not be provided by capitalist enterprises. So that is where planning comes into place. How can you plan the economy so that the overall social service is provided both by government organizations, also by state-owned enterprises, or sometimes by private enterprise. Today, there's some service which we always needed: electricity, water, energy, gas, sewage, waste disposal, communication, education, health, etc. Of course, this can be served by private companies, but at the same time, they are essential services we need in a modern society. So what is the right mixture of communist, capitalist companies, and what's the right mixture of government, and what's the right mixture of state-owned enterprise, is something these 5-year plans are looking at. Try to manipulate the relationship between different stakeholders in the society. So these 5-year plans, I'm starting with the 5-year plan number 1, from 1953 to 1957. Now remember, the PRC is established in 1949, so it took them almost 4 years. before they can come up with the first 5-year plan. Now, at the moment, the 5-year plan start with the year number ending 1 and 6. So there is discrepancy. As I said, the 14th annual plan, 5-year plan is 2021 to 2025. So and the first 5-year plan is 15.3. So there is a gap here. So I have to explain why there's a gap, and then we'll move on to the 14 plan. So the first plan is actually 1953 to 1957, and that first plan is pretty successful. Okay. They established some large-scale industrial projects. Now, these projects, some of them eventually becomes state-owned enterprise. Some of these projects becomes research institutes. Some of the project remains as just projects. But the idea is that as a country coming out from the Second World War, and before the Second World War, there were civil wars in China, and the last dynasty, the Qing dynasty, was toppled in 1911. After 1911, China went into a civil war, different warlords occupying different regions of China. And then we have the Sino-Japanese War, which is 3 years longer than the Second World War. After the Second World War, we also had another civil war between the Communist Party and Kuomintang KMT. And then after that, the KMT moved to Taiwan, Communist Party took over. The country is broken. China is very, very broken and poor. Everything is in chaos. So they have to almost start from scratch. How can you organize? Now, at that time, the Chinese population is around 400 million. Now, today is 1.4 billion. So, from that time to now, 70 years, Chinese population increased about by three times. And the life expectancy at that time is about 34 years. Today, Chinese life expectancy is 76 years. So there is a huge work to be done. So the first 5-year plan put forward developing industry. We understand that the reason why China fall behind the Western countries is because we haven't industrialized. With industry, the productivity of the Western countries exploded, whereas in China, it is still an agricultural society. Its productivity is way, way below. That reflects in the poverty of the Chinese people. So they have to start with industry. Unfortunately, some of the steps are out of sync. So when you have industry, that means you have a number of people working as a factory worker in some industries. That means these people are not producing food. But we know that food is essential. Without food, you can't live on. So there is a balance between continuously producing food and producing industrial product. The way to solve it is increase the productivity of the farmers or the agriculture sector, so that less people involved in food production. At the same time, you can release some labor power to work in industry to improve the industry production, so to benefit the whole society. When China started, about 95% of people are farmers. 95%. Today, for example, in America, about 4% are farmers. You see the big gap in agricultural productivity. That means in China, at the beginning of PRC, we need 90-something people to feed 100 people, and still poor. Whereas in America, 4 people is able to produce food for 100 people, plus surplus to sell to the rest of the world. That is a very significant difference. The first plan, unfortunately, put too much emphasis on industry and neglected agriculture production, because at that time the agricultural production is still basically human labor plus handicraft industries. There is a lot of investment. 55 billion at that time is a huge amount of money, and the effect is also very, very good. Within 5 years, the industrial products increased by over 128%. More than double. But we have to remember, it is from a very low beginning. But still, there's a big problem. If you want to industrialize, the first thing you need is material or steel. So in 1953, the steel production is only 1.35 million metric tons. Then, with Soviet help, it increased to 5.35 million metric tons. Now today, China produces about 80% of the world's steel. It's not in unit of million tons, they are in unit of billion tons. So it's a totally different ball game. Coal production from reached 131 million tons, increased by 98%. They counted industrial and agricultural products together, but in fact, the agricultural product is not keeping in line with industry, so it becomes a big issue. Agricultural production couldn't keep pace with industrial production. That means as we move more people into the factory, the amount of food available decreases. So there was a problem now. Most industry are in cities, and food production is in rural area. So the rural area producing food has a portion of that have to be taken out to move to the city to feed the people in the city. So the balance is, how do we keep the population in the city fed and keep the population in the rural area fed? Food is not enough, because as you move more people into industry, you have less people in the agricultural sector producing less food. And on the other side, you have a large consumption. So that was a huge issue. The Chinese government learned that lesson. And then they implement the second 5-year plan. It is total disastrous at that time. They are still thinking we will need to make China strong by industrializing. So more people is actually moved out from the rural area to produce industrial product. That's the so-called Great Leap Forward. That great leap forward reduces the amount of food available. But at the same time, the government, being a planned economy, the government will specify how much food is able to be extracted from rural area so as to feed the people in the cities. And the bureaucrats make a huge mistake by over saying that the produce is increasing. So, for example, initially we have a 1 acre of land, and the number of acres can't change. This is the amount of land, okay? You can't change much. But they can still say, okay, I reclaim some area from the forest, increase the acreage. Okay, that's one way. The other way to increase the claim production, you say 1 acre used to produce, say, 100 units of certain food, grains or rice, whatever, 100 units. They will say, okay, this year we have a good result, we produce 110. The village secretary next door, in the next village there, in order to promote it, get itself promoted into the next level. We talk about the political system in China in the first meeting this year. They are from one level promoted to the next level every 5 years, and then promoted to the next. And that promotion depends on your performance. So if I say I have produced 10% more, then the next door people say, well, if I say I produce 20% more, I have more chance to get promoted. So they claim, no, you do 110, but we produce 120. At that time, nobody is going to check. Since nobody going to check, so everybody copy this, and the productivity of the land ballooned. It's not by percentage. Eventually, the claim of production is by factors. 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 10. From the federal, from the central government, looking at the reports, wow, we have good food production. It is 10% more than last year. No, it's 20% more. No, it's 2 times more, 10 times more. The number coming up is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The central government didn't realize this is false numbers. They thought, wow, we have plenty of food, so we can feed the city better. Raise the tax by 10%. Use, for example, you produce 100 units of grains. The government say, oh, we will take 20 units from you. So you still have 80 units for the farmers to eat, and that 20 units move to the city to feed the workers. Okay. Now you claim 1 unit can produce, instead of 100, is 500 units. They go, hey, good. You don't need to eat 500 that much. Instead of taking 20%, we increase to 30%. Not much, but 30% of 500 is 150, and you only produce 100. You basically no food. All the produce is being taken. Still not enough. What happened? A famine. This famine is caused both by this bureaucratic overstating their produce. Plus, on that couple of years, the heaven doesn't help. We have dryness, we have locust infestations, all kinds of natural disasters also spread throughout the country. We have 3 years of famine, 3 years of serious famine. Probably 10% of people die. Now, at that time, China had about 400 million people. We lost about 30 million. Not a good time. Really not a good time. The Great Leap Forward, with massively overstated produce, a massive nationwide famine ensued, plus all kinds of different problems. Because at that time they say, oh, the sparrows are taking out the seeds, so they have the Great Sparrow Campaign, driving out the sparrows. When the sparrows are out, that means the locusts are not checked, and we have the locust, massive locust disasters, eating all grains, etc. Plus, as I say, natural weather-based issues. Instead of recognizing that the food production is reduced, the central government thought the food production is increased. And in order to drive industrial process, they have to take more food from the rural area, causing widespread famine. So this widespread famine is both a result of wrong planning, a result of political structure not checking, and natural disasters. All factor seems like Murphy's Law. When you are having problems, seems all problems all lumped together. Bad years. Because of that, the original third-year plan should start at 1963. At that time, the Chinese economy is too dislocated, so they have to delay it. The lesson is, 5-year plan can go wrong, and the consequence is huge. Planned economy can go wrong, just like capitalist economy. Now, I'm not saying that, planned economy is bad, no good. We have to look at the risk, the different types of risk. What about capitalist society? Do they have risk? Look at the global financial crisis. Look at the 2008. What's that? They also have great risk. Although in Australia, we don't feel the famine at this global financial crisis. The poor countries felt the impact of global financial crisis, and their hunger level rise up during all these crises. So, yes, planned economy has risk, but at the same time, capitalist economy also have its risk. It is a matter of how we deal with the risk, how the planning get improved so that we minimize the risk. So let's jump forward to our main issue, the 14th 5-year plan, FYP, 5-year plan. It should start in 2021 and finish in 2025. And we are now 2023. So it's already 2 years into it. The plan is draft in October 2020. We remember 2020 as the year of COVID-19. And this is October in that COVID year. So we have to look at the background of the draft of this 14th five-year plan. As we explained last meeting, China-US relationship is worsening. United States now consider China as the main challenger to its global dominance. It is also the year of COVID. China, for the first time in 44 years, the first quarter economy GDP strength. Yes, by the end of 2020, China still managed to have a growth of GDP to 2.2%, I think. But it is October, and the preparation work is done almost half a year ago. So when the planner looking at the situation, it's no good. Very, very, very poor economy. But they recognize one thing. By the end of 2020, in December, China eliminated absolute poverty. They have all the data in their hands, looking at the reduction rates, almost done. The first 100-year plan is almost done. They know that by 2020, there will be no absolute poverty in China. But of course, the Western doesn't point that out. But the plan put that very sharply and tell everybody, yeah, the situation is bad, but we have done some great job. Because 2021 is the 100th anniversary of the formation of Communist Party of China, CPC. And their first long-term goal is by the 100th anniversary of CPC, China will enter into a moderate poverty country. That means there's no absolute poverty. And they have to achieve that. And they did achieve that in 2020. Then after that, they had also another centenary plan, which is on the 100th anniversary of the formation of PRC, the People's Republic of China. They want China to be a modern socialist country, a strong modern socialist country. And PRC is formed in 1949. That means 2049, they want to achieve a strong socialist country. So they have to take steps in order to reach that final goal. So they also incorporate the long-term goal for 2035. So that is 2035 is the intermediate step before they launch into the final acceleration or final steps towards 2049 or 2050 to become a strong modern society. Now, of course, we have to later on, I think later in the year, I will try to explain to you what do the Chinese mean by a strong modern socialist country. But now, there's a big difference between country strength from the Eastern point of view, from the Western point of view. For the Chinese, strong doesn't mean we want to dominate the world. Strong means people are happy. The countries are well protected. The countries has huge influence, both economically, politically, socially, etc., etc. In that sense, strong. But it's not militarily strong. But that's another issue. Now, the plan itself is available from Georgetown University, translated. Of course, it's available in Chinese version. I encourage everyone to get a copy and then understand if you are interested in what is this plan. Later on, I will share the screen of this plan, the English version, to let you have a feel of what does it mean. So it is the first 5 years to embark on a new journey to build China into a modernized socialist country in an all-round way. So the overall objective is, this is the first 5-year period after China achieved its first centenary objective of establishing a well-off society in an all-round way. Riding on this momentum, we, mean the CPC, are pressing the advance towards the second centenary objective, embarking on the new journey to build China into a modernized socialist country in an all-round way. You notice the change between the first objective and second objective. The first objective, well-off country, well-off society, moderately prosperous, into modernized socialist country. They have a goal here. Now, it's not communist country. It want to move into a modernized socialist country, although it's run by Communist Party. So yeah, there's a big difference between socialist and communist. But the objective is still moderate. They want to move China into a modern socialist country by 2049. Okay, we have talked about the Western background. So let's look at the Chinese version of the background. First of all, they have to celebrate eliminating absolute poverty. It is a historically significant event in human history. There is no country in human history managed to totally eliminate absolute poverty, even in our capitalist society. Even in here in Australia, we still have homeless people in our city. But in China, there isn't any homeless people. That means it actually have removed absolute poverty. Now, there's a difference between absolute poverty and poverty. Absolute poverty means you have no shelter, you have you worry about your food, you have no health care, you have no education, you have no job, etc. This is absolute poverty. Poverty means, well, you have shelter, but not very good, but still you have shelter, you have food, not the best of thing, you have sufficient carry, at least you are not going to die out of hunger. You have some jobs, maybe not very good. Healthcare, when you are sick, you get looked after, etc., etc. These are still people poor, but not absolute poverty. There's a distinction here. What China wants to do is move up the ladder. Okay, we eliminated absolute poverty. We want people to live better overall. Now, as we explained last time, the world is at a crossroad in many different ways. We have the now at that time, 2020, we don't know there will be a Russia-Ukraine war, but we have other things looking lurking. American has spent 20 years in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria. We have instability in Middle East. The economy system, we're looking at huge U.S. deficit, etc., etc., as we explained last meeting. So the planet in China recognize this is a once-in-a-country change. And it is also on the beginning of deepening scientific and technological change. In terms of industry, we will say first industrial revolution, second industrial revolution, and so on. We are now on the eve of another industrial revolution, moving from telecommunication, digital technology, into artificial intelligence, new material science, new medical science, enhancement, etc., etc. We are at the edge of another huge technological change, and that technological change will have big impact on our quality of life. Throughout history, humans' the quality of life depends on the availability of energy. We are now at the point where the world needs to get rid of the fossil fuel, move into renewables. The interesting thing about renewables is that it is the initial capital is huge. You need to put solar panel on our roof. That is a huge investment. But once you have that, then in the next 20 years, 10 years, you don't have to pay for the fuel. It's coming from the roof. It's free. Of course, there are issues like how do you store the energy. Today, now when I install my solar panels, it cost me $5,000 to have 1.5 kilowatts. Very sufficient, so I can supplement some of my electricity. Today, you can install 5 kilowatts, more than 3 times my installation, with about $3,000, half of my cost. And 5 kilowatts is enough to power you whole day. The expensive part now is your battery, your storage. Once you solve the battery problem, you have 5 kilowatts on our roof. You basically is energy, in terms of energy, costs you nothing. Yes, the capital investment is huge, but the long-term running cost getting lower and lower. That means our energy cost is on another step down. It's just about 1,000 years ago. You almost need to work 1 week to have a candle. And then when we have electricity, then we have to work about one week to have energy for the whole month. Today, our energy bill, wow, expensive. We are talking about 20% of our maximum, 20% of our income into energy. And when renewable comes, it will be lower even more, maybe into 5% range of our income devoted to energy. And that trend is coming. And that is part of the scientific and technological revolutions we are expecting to happen. International environment is very complicated. We have the COVID. COVID will have a huge impact on our future health because we know that about 10% of people with COVID, you may have survived the first COVID, but 10% of these people will have long COVID. So that will be widespread and far-reaching. And the global economy is turning downwards. Everywhere, inflation is high. We are talking about 6%, 7%. So because of that, the central banks are increasing the rates. Our rate is now had increased. I don't know what's the number now. It's about, I think it's 4% now. That has a huge impact on our younger generation to start their life buying a property, for example. The landscape of global energy supply and demand changed. Especially now we know we have the Russia-Ukraine war. Western sanctions limited the supply of energy from Russia to Europe. And Europe have to get energy from the rest of the world. Obviously, Russia is selling its energy to the rest of the world. And because of that, the Europeans increased their cost of getting the same energy. You used to have a pipe send the energy to Germany. Now the pipe is broken, no more. They have to use LNG, liquefied natural gas, natural petroleum. Expensive. The whole global supply chain had changed. And United States is still struggling to maintain its global dominance, almost in every sphere. China also have to shift its own development. At the beginning, I mean in the early part of the reform and opening, China grew by exporting labor, cheap labor. $1 US dollar per hour, $2 US dollar per hour, $4 US dollar per hour, etc. Working at about half of the minimum wage of the developed world. But eventually, the people in China demand better life. They demand their wages to also increase in proportion to the GDP growth. China's GDP exploded by 15 times. Is that 15 times or 50 times? Whatever. We expect the Chinese citizens' salary to increase in line. That means China can no longer be producers using cheap labor. The labor costs increase. So they have to move up the value chain from low value production into high value production. So they have to move into the so-called high quality development. But China also realized that there are still imbalance and insufficiency. Some of the areas we don't have a good, so this plan have to deal with it. Another big problem is, again, the rural and urban relationship. As I mentioned at the beginning, there is always a difficult tension between the rural area and the urban area. Urban, by definition, does not produce sufficient food for it to sustain its population. That is the definition of urban. So, usually the rural area will have a lower living standard, producing food. and then the produce can be used to supply to the urban area. You want to get the farmer rich, you increase the food price. The farmer get more income. But that will make the urban area things expensive. Because they have to depend on the food minimum. Nothing else. If nothing else, food is necessary. And that means their living standard has to lower to rise the rural area. You suppress the cost of food, the produce. The urban area will have a better life, better quality of life, but the farmer are being suppressed. So there's always this balance. How can you balance that one? In China, we see there's a disparity between the rural and the urban area. And Chinese, being a socialist country, want to decrease the difference between the two groups of people. They are both citizens or Chinese citizens. Why one group have to suffer when the other group can enjoy? So they have to do something about that. This is a high-level political document, so we have to also look at its politics. It's stated 5 persist. That means they will persist in keeping the party's total leadership. Political, okay? It's a people-centered document. It looks at the quality of life of people. It incorporates new development concept. It deepens reform and opening. More integration with the rest of the world. And there are systemic concepts. We can easily understand the first 5, but what do they mean by systemic concept? So-called systemic concept is strengthen the forward-looking thinking, think ahead, over planning, strategic positioning, and holistic advancement. You can't just advance one sector and neglecting the other sectors. That is the lesson from the first 5-year plan. Give consideration to the overall domestic and international situations, and handle both development and security well. We understand if we are not secure, if the country enter into war, all livelihoods is in chaos. So we have to maintain peace. And to maintain peace, we need security. A high to a coordinated national effort. We don't want one part of the country moving in one direction, other part of the country moving in the opposite direction, and then pulling the country apart. We want everybody understand where we are heading and we move in the same direction. So we want to have a coordinated national effort and better utilize the initiative of both the central and the local government and other spheres of society. As I explained, we can have government providing social service. We can have state-owned enterprises providing social service. We can also have capitalist private company providing the social service. But if we can understand all this together and then incorporate everything into one big plan, everybody moving in the same direction, we move faster. Focus on consolidating the foundation, building on strengths, making up shortcomings, and strengthening areas of weakness. Concentrate on preventing and diffusing major risks and challenges. In any society, there is always risk and challenge. Sometimes the risk may come from politics, political instability. Sometimes it may come from ambitions from other countries, like invasions or other political problem. And other risks involve natural risk. COVID is a natural risk. Earthquake, bushfire, famine, flooding, etc. These are all risks. As a responsible government, we don't let the people to deal with the risk all by themselves. We group together as a government and provide help to solve this major risk. So we are looking at preventing and diffusing, because some of the risks you can't prevent. Earthquake. Okay. And achieve integration of quality, structure, scale, speed, efficiency, and security of development. That is called systemic concepts. Think of it as a whole instead of individual parts. The long-term goal for 2035. By then, China will basically realize a socialist modernization, economic strength, science and technology strength, and overall national strength will rise sharply. The total economic output and per capita income of urban and rural residents will reach new heights. Major breakthroughs will be achieved in key and core technologies, and China will enter the first rank of innovation-oriented countries. China moving towards developed countries status. At the moment, some part of China is developed, Shanghai, Beijing, Guangdong, etc. But in other part of China, it is way behind. It is developing. So we want to move that part into the developed as well. So we want to move the whole China into at least competitively can compete with the current first-rank countries like United States, Japan, South Korea, Germany, etc. Onto the same rank. Establish a cultural powerhouse. Chinese culture had to have its own confidence in your own culture. Educational powerhouse. We continue to produce high-quality citizens. A talent powerhouse. Our citizens is able to create. A sport powerhouse. Compared to Australia, we are a sport powerhouse in Australia and a healthy China. We recognize that we cannot continuously to dump our waste into an environment, which would not be sustainable. So it will have to go into the green modes of production, a sustainable production and living. Carbon emissions will decline steadily after reaching a peak, and the ecological environment will have fundamentally take a turn for the better. And the goal of building a beautiful China will basically be achieved by 2035. Per capita gross domestic product will reach the level of middle ranks of developed countries. Middle income group will be significantly enlarged. Equitable access to basic public services will be achieved. Again, social services has to be available, affordable. And rural-urban disparities in regional development and disparities in people's standard of living will be significantly reduced. They don't want to increase the Gini ratio. They want to decrease it. Construction of a peaceful and secure China will reach a new level with national defense and armed forces modernization basically achieved. The people's life will be better still and more obvious, and substantive progress will have to be made towards the comprehensive human development and common prosperity for all. Again, the legitimacy of CPC is the improvement of living standards of Chinese people. Its legitimacy doesn't come from voting, doesn't come from votes. It comes from the government's performance. Okay, come from Wikipedia. Look at some topics. Economy. By 2035 will be 3 times 2020 level. That means on average you have to be 7% or more GDP growth per year. But looking at the last 3 years, 2020, 2021 and 2022, China is at about 2 to 4%. 2022 initial estimate is 6%, but end up 4%. 2023 this year, China's own expectation is 6%. The rest of the world expect China to be at most 5%. So there is a huge gap in order to achieve this 7%. How to do that? By a dual circulation. That means encourage domestic consumption as well as improve foreign trade. Looking at 2022, the Chinese foreign trade increased at about 17%, 17%. But the domestic consumption doesn't increase that much, making the economy growing only by 4%. There's a huge gap here. And also by innovation-driven economy. That means moving up the value chain. In order to move up the value chain, you have to respect intellectual properties. There's no other way, otherwise people will not innovate. You also have to have a good environment. We know China committed to peaking its carbon emission by 2030, I think, and then will be carbon neutral by 2060. So the Chinese government put into plans to achieve that goal by adopting new energy technologies, make sure that the carbon emission will peak by the end of 2020, before 2030. And China has always had an issue with water, so water conservation infrastructure. So this is the overall plan of maintaining a healthy ecology. They divide into 3 specific zones, the 3 circles, and then some boundaries. We know that Mongolia and Inner Mongolia region is steppes. That means they are only with grass and not much trees. And whenever there is a wind, then the sand from the desert could blow up and causing huge air quality issues. So the horizontal long line there is the new Green Great Wall. China is going to plant a lot of trees to stop the desertification of China. And there are 2 forest regions. One is in the upper right-hand corner, and another one is on the lower right-hand corner right there. These are forest regions. The rest is basically China. China's main production is along the East Coast in terms of food. So there's a big issue here as well. Okay, in energy, implement major energy saving and low carbon technology. using demonstration projects and carry out major project demonstration as near zero energy buildings, near zero carbon emission, and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. Carry out construction of recycling systems for waste materials in all 60 large and medium-sized cities in order to reduce the waste. Again, improvement of environment. This is the energy supply line. We know that the blue line is from wind energy. The red lines are from both hydropower as well as nuclear power. And you see the energy is moving from the west into the east, because after all, the main centers are in the coastal centers. So energy are moving in that directions, and they're building a lot of very high energy transport power cables, etc. This is about the national network, water networks. I will leave it for you to read it. If you are interested, I'm not going to read it one by one. Transportation, civil aviation, construct another 30 new airports, complete the 8 vertical, 8 horizontal high-speed rail network, and then also improve the transportation between Xinjiang, Tibet, and the rest of the country. So we can see it from here. The red lines are the current 4 verticals, and the green lines are the current 4 horizontals, and the black lines are those increased to produce these 8 horizontal, 8 vertical. And you see there's a line to the top left hand corner. That line connects the rest of the network to Xinjiang, and next to Xinjiang is Tibet. So they are connecting the west with China, and this network will be completed by 2025. So you will see there is a huge investment in high-speed network in China. The rest come from the plan itself. Objective: economic development. It has to be sustainable, healthy. There will be a reasonable every year annual GDP growth. Strengthen domestic market. Increase research and development by 7% per year. Industrial foundation and supply chain will be modernized and enhanced. Rural and urban development coordination improved, and steadily improve the urban ratio to about 65%. By 2025, it will be 60.7%. By 2035, it will be 65%. That's the objective. Continue with reform and opening up, build up high standard market, and respect property rights, and using market as a mechanism for allocation of resources. Impact the socialist core concepts into the society. In our society here, we are basically committed to capitalist principles. We value free market. We see capital as the main socialist social function. We buy our food from private market, private providers. We work in this capitalist concept. Since China is a socialist country, it also needs the citizens to understand the socialist point of view, and therefore it will be impacting this socialist core concept into the society, make it as part of the understanding and common understanding of how the country will operate. By also improving physical and mental health, centralized, affordable social services, improve people's spiritual and cultural lives, enhance Chinese culture, make people more culturally confident. And one very important thing is cohesiveness. Chinese emphasize of group work and cohesiveness. Develop into an ecological civilization, meaning this civilization will sustain. We are not extracting too much from our environment so that when the environment is depleted, the civilization will collapse. China doesn't want to do that. We have been living on this land for the last couple thousand years. So we don't want our children suddenly find this land not livable. So we have to go into an ecological civilization in which we value the resources provided by the environment. I think I need to move a little bit faster, otherwise we don't have time for question and answer. Improve well-being, effectiveness of governance, and these are the major factors. Some are anticipated, some are binding. That means there's nothing you can change. You must achieve binding. A lot of the requirements. Again, I can make this available to you by the link. Now, before I finish, I want to change to another share, and this share will let you have a look at the PowerPoint itself. So let me just share another screen to let you have a feel of what is okay. This screen, okay, share. Now this is the PDF. Translated by CSET from the George University, and the original Chinese documents available here, and I will put the link on the description in my video on YouTube so that you can download from it. And then we will quickly go through. This document itself is 146 pages long. It divided into 19 parts. Part 1 is a general description and with several articles. Part 2 talk about the innovation-driven development. Part 3 emphasize in modern industrial system and real economy. China is understand the value of virtual economy, but without the real economy, the virtual economy doesn't support it. The difference between real and virtual is that real economy means we have the production itself, food, energy, water, infrastructure, etc. Virtual economy means knowledge, teaching, development, new ideas, or other high-level things. And forming strong domestic market, there's one big problem at the moment is how to encourage the middle class in China to spend more money in order to develop the domestic market. Digital development and construct a digital China, comprehensive reform and continue opening up with the market economy, move more into more capitalist handling, changing the mix between government service, state-owned enterprise, and private capital. It insists of prioritizing the development of agricultural and rural areas because we have a discrepancy between the rural and the urban population. improve new urbanization strategy to move more people into the urban areas, optimize regional economic layouts, and advance socialized teaching the Chinese people what do we mean by we Chinese or the Chinese capitalist thinking. Chinese socialist thinking. Promote green development and facilitate the harmonious coexistence of people and nature. Nature provides us a lot of resources. We want to maintain that resource available to our children, grandchildren, etc. Put high-level opening up to outside into practice. Improve the quality of citizens. That means a comprehensive human development. Enhance people's livelihoods, well-being. Raise the level of co-construction and co-governance and sharing. Coordinate development and security to construct a more peaceful and secure China. China wants to be peaceful. We understand if we are in war, we are ruining lives of people. We don't want to export destruction. We want to export construction. When people are rich, they will have to do more business. By doing more business, Chinese will be able to make more business and make more money, and everybody happy. Accelerate national defense and armed force modernization. Strengthen the construction of socialist democracy and rule of law. People are saying China is not rule of law. Well, we recognize there are still some way to go, and we are strengthening it. Adhere to the one country, two system. This part is for Hong Kong and Macau, and eventually probably for Taiwan. The ninth part is strengthening the plan implementation assurance. We want the plan to be executed correctly. Okay, so very quickly go through that. You can read about that at your leisure if you like, and this is available online anyway. I will provide you with the link. Okay, I will stop share here and then let you ask question or some discussion. Okay, anyone? It's all silence. No? Yes, please. Unmute yourself first. Yes.
Do you think that China feels a deep-seated debt to Russia because they helped them so much at the beginning, and this can affect their cooperation with them in this Russian-Ukraine war?
Now, Russia-Ukraine war make Russia isolated from the Western countries. The number of countries which apply sanctions to Russia is about 40 out of almost 200 UN members countries. So about a quarter of the world's countries apply sanctions to Russia. And obviously with sanctions, that means the trade between this country with Russia will be limited. But Russia is still able to export its resources through Turkey, India, China, etc. So Russia's economy is standing quite well. 2020 its economy contracted by about 4%, compared with Ukraine almost 1/3. So I would say Russia is standing quite well. In terms of trade between Russia and the rest of the world, in particular with China. China is now selling a lot of manufactured goods to Russia, cell phones, cars parts, etc., and computers, because Russia is being sanctioned on these parts. But at the same time, Russia is selling a lot of energy to China. It's natural gas and other things. The next big move between Russia and China is that Russia is going to block out a large section of area near the northern China and make it into a special economic zone, and that zone will be co-developed with China. Now that is a big move. We know that this is coming, but the actual document hasn't been officially released yet. When it is released, then we will say Chinese farmland, the available land for agriculture in China, will increase by about 30%. So that is huge cooperation between Russia and China. Of course, how that special economic zone is managed, how the profit are being split between Russia and China, we don't know yet. Details are not available. But I would say this development will be a huge development. So from Chinese point of view, China just released a 12-point peace plan for Ukraine. And the first point is respect country's sovereignty. So I think if this plan go ahead, China will be pressing Russia pretty hard on releasing the captured area from Ukraine. But of course, these are all negotiated. The final outcome we never know. It depends on the negotiation table. But the 12-point plans, the first point is respect country's sovereignty. And the second point is respect the need of country's national security. These 2 points is a little bit contradicting in a sense, because to interpret why Russia execute this special military operation is because Ukraine want to join NATO. That means putting missiles right next to Russia from the national security point of view is not acceptable, and therefore it could. But remember, the whole thing started in 2014. It's not 2022. In 2014, the elected president of Ukraine was overthrown in a coup, and then it's a pro-Western government coming in. Okay, any other questions? Have I answered your question?
You've answered a lot of information that I'm very happy with. Thank you, Albert.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Could I ask a question? You mentioned in passing that part of the 5-year plan is to China to expand its military and military technological capacities. What does China see as its main threat internationally?
It's still the military encroachment from the United States. Too many American military bases around China.
China, yeah.
That is, like in case of a conflict, whatever conflict, if American try to blockade the sea routes of China, China will be in a big trouble. Given there's a lot, about 3/4 of Chinese energy is imported at the moment. So if it is blockade, for example, in Market Street around Singapore, if there's a military blockade, Chinese, the whole country will get into a huge energy shock. Suddenly, for example, not saying losing about all is import energy. Let's say loss about 10% of import energy. Then the price will not just increase by 10%. It will probably increase by 30%, 40%. And you can imagine such an energy shock to the economy. It's huge. Everything suddenly becomes more expensive. Just like what is happening in Germany at the moment. Energy prices go through the roof. So what happened? All the heavy industries which need energy had to move out. Move to somewhere with more secure, more reasonable energy cost in order to compete in the global market. When this huge energy industry move out, then the workers had to be laid off. And we are talking about huge energy industries moving out en masse. The coming unemployment in Germany or in Europe is worrisome. I really worry about the employment in Europe because of this energy squeeze. Obviously, China don't want to experience that. So I think in terms of military, China is not going to build a offensive military force. No need. China is interested in doing business, making money. But it has a strong defensive military, so that in the case of blockade, it can break through the blockade and then protect its trade.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Albert,
Yes.
do we know the dates for the next term yet?
Next term dates I haven't know yet, but
Right.
the topics I can tell you. Just let me grab my piece of paper. Okay. Next time I will concentrate on culture. So I will try to explain the difference between Chinese language and Western language. And then traditional clothings. I really like looking at beautiful girls. So, and then wine and spirit, the kind of. So that is the second term. The fourth term is try to answer the questions why Chinese is the only civilization which is continuous for the last 4,000 years. We know 4,000 years ago we have the Greek civilization, we have the other civilizations, but none of them exist continuously. It doesn't mean people in Greek doesn't exist suddenly. They still go on, but the civilizations is the way of life changed. Their language changed. But Chinese is continuous. So I'll try to answer that question in the third term. In the fourth term, we will go back to politics. Look at relationship with USA, BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Global South, the relationship between China and this area. So that will be my plan. Of course, you can send me your suggestion. You can change the plan anyway. So
Good, thank you.
okay. Anyone else?
Right on time.
It's almost time.
Yes.
Okay, in that case, thank you so much for your attention, and then we will see you next term. And I will send out my suggested topics to the course coordinators, and they will fix a time, and then we'll advertise the time to everybody. Because after all, we have people from different UVAs, so we will coordinate that together. So thank you so much for your attention, and then see you in the second term. Bye bye.
Thanks, Albert. Thanks a lot, mate.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Albert, all the best.
Bye bye.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.